Thank you for tuning into our podcast. We are coming to you from Holyoke, Massachusetts. I am your host, Carrie, and joining me is Holyoke's very own local historian and creator of the Historical Tours of Greater Holyoke, Robert Camus. He offers both public and private tours, as well as presentations of the local canal systems, reservoirs, cemeteries, and churches, as well as various parks and streets in Holyoke, South Hadley, and Chicopee, Mass. So now you lead these tours and give these presentations yourself, is that correct?
That's right, and I love doing cemetery tours.
Okay, and today you're going to be telling us about the Fairview Cemetery in Chicopee. So describe the history of the Fairview Cemetery.
All right, money was set aside in 1869, and in that year, Chicopee bought land that was on the Lyman Van Horn farm, and they gave him money for the change for the deed, and they also in the deed wrote that he could be buried there with his family for free, and he is there. So Lyman Van Horn, a lot of Van Horns are buried there. Now, it was ready by 1870, but remember, it's being built. It's being built in 1869. And so the hole in tube has a year on it, it says 1869. But no one's buried there in 1869. The first burial was March 13th, 1870, and Lydia Hyde was buried there. If anything seems older than that in this cemetery, there's a reason. Because across the whole United States, after after Civil War in 1865, there was a movement to try to get cemeteries that were prettier than the ones that already existed and move the old burials out of the clustered part of towns and cities. It happened across the whole country. It happened in South Hadley, in Holyoke, in Springfield. It happened in Chicopee. And it happened such that they start to move from the other Protestant cemeteries into this newer one. It was called the New Cemetery from 1870 to 1890, and new it was, so we got some new reburials. And so if you go to Maple Grove, you notice that, maybe 5 family burial plots are gone, and they're missing the tombstones, and yet they left the curbing behind. It's very strange, but that's a very common thing around all the area cemeteries, and this movement by 1910 had stopped, but it displaced many of these burials. Most people thought it was beautiful. I wish I had these old cemeteries back. There's still a few that were never moved, but it's a pretty decent thing to do.
So describe the chapel.
All right, the Spaulding family of Chicopee wanted to donate a gift, and that they did. And the Spaulding family had a chapel built. It was a chapel only, no one's buried there, it's not a mausoleum. And the Spaulding family has their own separate gravestone out, maybe 200 yards away from that chapel. The chapel is very gorgeous inside. It had to be redone once because it was having some decay, so it was renovated. And mass, you have the church mass, but sometimes when you arrive at the cemetery with the burials and the bereaved people, you want to have a small graveside prayer. And so they bring them in this chapel, and they have their last wishes, and then the person gets buried. And it's still functional, so people, if they want it, can still use it. And inside, I heard that some of the windows are stained glass, and they're Tiffany stained glass. If they are, then they're very expensive. But it was put in about 1920s, and it was renovated at some point around the 1980s, and it still looks gorgeous. I've never been inside, but I hear it's gorgeous inside too.
So quickly, before we get on with our interview, just to fill our listeners in, if you want to find out more information or want to sign up for any of his various tours, you can check out his website at hoyokecanaltour.org, and there he has both videos of the various stops along each tour and also past and present photos of the historical sites throughout as well. And if you're interested in setting up a private tour, you can email him directly at bobcat4214 and they are perfect for fun educational outdoor activities for the whole family or for your group parties, especially those special occasions or get-togethers. And they're also good just for getting outdoors for the day. So getting back to our interview, what are some of the famous burials here?
Okay, Dexter Robinson, the mayor of Chicopee for a while, and also the lawyer that defended. So Dexter Robinson defended Lizzie Borden successfully and got her off for the murder of her parents. And he was very famous around Massachusetts for a lot of reasons. Now, at some point, I believe he became a governor. Now, he's buried here, but probably the most famous burial of all is one of the persons that people around the area would know much more, and that's Edward Bellamy. Edward Bellamy wrote some books. One was, I think, Looking Backwards, and that's where he wrote a book that is almost defending communism and making a utopian look at what life would be like if people shared things with each other much more than they do. I personally don't think that would work, but he wrote a nice book that people love to read, and he's buried here with his wife and a couple of his kids, and he has a simple, very plain-looking brownstone cemetery. Now, there are other famous burials around, and you can wander around the cemetery and get a great look at them. But also in the cemetery is a person named George Stearns and his family, and we're going to mention him in the next question. And that's very important because this whole cemetery was made so that people would have great looking family stones, and it really does work because you put the central stone and then surround it. In fact, there's a zinc stone inside of here that looks very nice, so try to find that.
So, who designed the gates?
Okay, now the gates from Abbey Street are beautiful, and I hope you end up going in there to look them up. And stop at the gates, walk inside either one of the two entrance ways for pedestrians, and of course there's one for cars. And you'll find that there's plaques inside. They tell you what they're built for, off of whose money, so forth. Well, that person, George Stearns, died in 1894. And in his will, he said that he wanted a lot of charity around Chicopee with his money, but one of them was he wanted a nice gate built for this Fairview cemetery, and he was going to be buried here. So in 1895, after the will was served, the money was given to Melzar Mosman, a very famous sculptor in Chicopee. He was famous throughout the country, and then this gate system was built off of that money. It was designed and built very quickly after that. And so we're blessed with this beautiful gate. And I hope everyone goes in this gate. There is another entrance away, but this is the nicest one by far. When you drive in, you see empty grassland, and then you see the Holden Tomb, and then you see the chapel, and then you start seeing the family plots on both sides. So it's a very pleasant way to go in that side.
Thank you, Robert, for educating us on your tours, and we want to thank our listeners for tuning in. And you can also tune into a large selection of our other podcasts and much more at his website, hoyocanaltour.org. And again, you can email him directly for private tours or to inquire about anything else at bobcat4214 @yahoo.com. And be sure to keep an eye out for his upcoming 2024 season tours and more as they become available.